think it'd be really cool if I went from being mentally unwell to like the most successful person on the entire planet. So that's the long
You
con
didn't see
I'm
that
trying to
coming.
get at. The world had no idea. From frat basements to the tippity top, baby.
Period.
Thanks for your concern.
Welcome back to Thanks for Your Concern. You're here with Ella.
And I'm Bernice. Hi.
Hi, Berenice.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good, dude. How are you?
You know, there's a lot going on in the world right now. It's just a little
Yeah.
bananas. You know it's bad when my sister starts sharing on social media. Like, she is just religiously very, like, anti-social media. Like, don't put private information out there. Like, it can be used against you at any time because she's a paralegal. So she, like, refuses to share a lot of things about her life. But, like, she was broken today. She was just like, here's, like, my immigration story and, like, just thoughts on that. And I was like, it has to be so bad for my sister to be out here like leading people to like get educated and like help. And you know, that made me a little emotional just because obviously it is really bad and it's really sad
Yeah.
to watch things unfold and to watch people be vulnerable. I don't know, watching people not necessarily think about that in their day to day. There's like, because I have two different types of friends who like are so checked out, and then there's like a group of people that are so checked in, and
Yeah.
obviously you can see that very clearly.
It might be good to have a checked out friend. All my friends are in it. You know, one of my best friends is an educator and they have a huge immigrant population
Yeah.
at their school. And like luckily we know Washington is basically saying we're not doing this bullshit. But that obviously doesn't, if there's injustice anywhere, there's injustice everywhere. Like it doesn't matter if I live in a state that isn't processing, these deportations, but there are deportations to other places in the country. So you can't just sit here and be like, okay, I'm fine. So I know it's weighing very heavy on people's hearts. And if you're listening to this, and the part that I'm overwhelmed in, I'm trying to just like narrow in on focus, is that there's so many things going on right now. Another thing is Trump is stopping funding for colleges until they take out DEI, and me and Berenice both worked for, I guess, technically DEI. I mean, I've worked with DEI at a college level capacity in a couple different ways because it is a part of recruitment and admissions, which I was, I guess, an employee for. And then also I worked for the cultural center at our university. And it's just like really crazy the misconceptions that there is around DEI. I think the one that I find, it's just comical because it's like DEI also includes like veterans, different ability, disabled. It's just not race. So I just think it's really crazy. And then I've often, like, I just remember this time in, I think, the 10th grade where I was having this conversation with someone about an internship that I was doing. And they're like, oh, yeah, like, you're a Black woman in STEM. Like, you're so lucky, you know? And I just wanted to, like, connect. I guess I'll just go into my update. This is a little off topic. What I was going to talk about is it's Oscar season, and I saw the Nickel Boys. Have you heard about that movie?
No.
So it's directed by Ramel Ross, and it's an adaptation of a book called The Nickel Boys. It's based on the Nickel Academy, which is a reform school that ran in Florida for Black children in the 60s and 70s. And that film really got me because the characters, it's like a first person POV of what it was like to be Black in the 60s and 70s. And the main character is like my dad's age, like down to the year. And so it's like I was almost seeing the world through his eyes as a kid. And it just like, it tore me the fuck up because having a parent like raised in Jim Crow, and I know that like Berenice has this experience of like, what would my life be in Mexico? And I sometimes think about like, what would my life be if my family didn't leave Barbados like 2 generations ago? Like what would my life be like if my dad didn't have to go through Jim Crow and I didn't live in America? So when people talk about DEI, it just rubs me the wrong way because it's like I just don't think they understand why we have to have these initiatives.
It just like shows that it's so largely based on this like misconception of it's a racist belief. Like
Yeah.
It's pretty evident, you know? Yeah, it's a scary time to be alive for sure. Don't know exactly how that's gonna play out in the long run. I know there's like obviously every organization right now is like all hands on deck on like fighting things that are unconstitutional that are right now are being signed and things like that. So we'll see the developments in the next couple of weeks. I know like also some countries put out like anti-deportation stuff, like we won't let ICE planes land or military planes land if they contain like people that are detained and getting deported. But I think also people forget that there is private institutions that are detention centers,
Yeah.
and they treat people like shit. So while countries may be pushing back, those people are still being detained and like treated poorly, and there's no visibility into private detention centers. So there's just a lot. There's just a lot of shit right now.
Yes.
Yeah. But for our episode, we just want to like maybe focus on something else.
A little levity.
Just a little levity, a little I don't know even necessarily hee hee ha ha's, but maybe what to plan if we're still around for the next couple of years.
All right, we're going to talk about the long game, the long con, baby. I am so ready to get into it. Okay, so the long game, the long con. Oh, long is a hard word for me. This is going to be a long episode to record. It's just sometimes you got to focus on the long game because in short, it's going to be tough. And I kind of think about decisions, and I especially think about how like I would rather choose short-term discomfort over long-term angst.
Yeah.
I've just found in my life that anytime I'm like, I don't want to jump to a new job because I don't want to be new again, or like, oh, I don't know if I want to break up with this guy because I don't want to, whatever. The short-term discomfort always weighs out because you got to think about the long game, baby. We can't just think about the next 2 days. Sometimes you got to think a year, 2 year, 3 years ahead.
Preach it. I am with you in like some more current situations where I'm experiencing like anxiety and discomfort. I have to remember that maybe it's like my first time dealing with a situation, right? So it's like I need to give myself a little grace that maybe I'm not like totally cool because this is a new situation that I decided to embark myself in. And this is like the first time that I'm living it. Maybe next time if something similar happens, I won't even feel anxiety and I'll be able to respond to it a lot differently with like different perspective from the things that I'm experiencing right now. And I think for the playing to win a game and not the rounds, these are just like growing pains, right? You're not going to win every round if you're playing the long game. That's for sure. You're going to get humbled a few times. Life will humble you inevitably.
Daily.
You should welcome these humbling experiences. Sometimes there's a lot of things that are in your control when you're playing the long game. I think the long game is just a sense of direction, being goal oriented, knowing where you're headed. That's the long game. I've tried to do the long game in, different situations. You can do it in life, you could do it with work, you can do it with a passion, you can do it. Some people do it in relationships, they play the long game. Do I recommend the long game in relationships? Anything that has to do with the long game is something that you truly believe is worth it, right? Like that's why you're playing to win such a long game, because you generally think that at the end of the day, that thing that you're aiming towards is so good and so worth it that you're willing to take time and experience and lose a couple of rounds to get. Now, I'm not convinced anyone I've met I'm trying to play the long game for.
Not yet.
Not yet. Sometimes I thought about that with a few people, but as I often say, if you want to get over someone, just get to know them. Is that in my mind of thinking maybe long game, like maybe this person just needs to mature a little. I got to know them more, and actually my dislike for them increased.
Instead of forcing things quickly, I've thought, you know what, long game, it'd probably be better just for me to let this play out. And if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Instead of trying to like force it for the short term. And, you find out, you're not actually in love with your best friend, and it's like, oh, well, I'm happy I didn't ruin this friendship trying to make a trying to make a relationship work. I don't know. Anyways, when it comes to relationships though, when you think about the long game is sometimes it's really hard in the moment to call things out of like, hey, I didn't like that, or you know, teaching someone how to be in a relationship with you, that takes work, and sometimes it's like I don't want to do that right now, but it's like, okay, actually I don't want to continue you making me I don't know, this might be like a stupid example, but like I'm such a people pleaser that like if you don't make scrambled eggs the way I like them, I might never say anything, right? But then I'm eating scrambled eggs that I don't fucking like for the rest of my life. So it's a lot easier to like be like, okay, in the short term, this might be hard for me to say, hey, you need to make like, hey, I don't like scrambled eggs like this. Like, that seems like such a little thing, but in the long term, then I'm gonna get scrambled eggs that I like consistency just because I've spoken up and thought about the long game instead of like the short term.
Yeah. And at the end, again, you have to see an end goal in this game, in this end game situation. I think with communicating your needs, I'm not the best at doing that. I did realize when wanted to start dating again that you have to communicate a lot of things because obviously someone else can't read your mind. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I was talking to my mom about it, and I was like, "This is extremely frustrating. Like, I don't think I could date a man again. Like, do I want to do that? Our brains are just really different." And she's like, you just have to tell them exactly what you need so they can fix it because they really won't know. And I'm like, but isn't that exhausting? And
Yeah.
she just said, yeah, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like what it's worth to you, right? You gain a partner, someone that you come home to every day. And I was like, right, right. That is the end goal of this situation, to communicate.
Talk about long game. I saw a TikTok that really resonated with me about this girl talking about celibacy and how like she was at one point she was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe people have been celibate for like 7, 10 years." But like now, every time I sit down for a date with a guy and just let him talk, he like talks me out of it. Like I come prepared to the date to get some, and then like I just let them go and they'll say something. And I thought that was really interesting because the long game of celibacy is like your own fucking piece, That's the long game. It's like,
Yeah.
and depending on your demographic, you might not find someone who meets every little fucking box for you, babes.
Most likely they won't.
Most likely. There's this concept in dating of like the most successful relationships, like this person meets like 65% of your wants, like,
Mhm.
and then people kind of like go looking for that other
Mm.
percentage, and then they find the 35% that they think they're missing in another person and then break up with the person that only had 65% of what they wanted, but then they're in a relationship that with a person that only has 35% of what they wanted. It was just the opposite of something, and so it's like, oh man, I feel like that happened. I was like, that's a really interesting perspective, and I actually had this perspective when I don't know why me and Berenice were talking about interracial relationships, but I think it was more the concept of like, am I really going to like marry a white man? And I'm like, well, if that's the only thing that's missing per se, like there's not a guarantee that I'm going to find a person of color that has that everything else.
Yeah, no, for real. And then with people of color, sometimes there's other dynamics at play. Okay,
Yeah.
I tried it. Every Latino man, almost every Latino man I dated, machismo up the yin yang, and I also couldn't deal with that. And then I was like, well, you know what? Maybe white people weren't so bad. No, I am down for interracial dating. Okay, I don't have bounds to love at all. But yes, the long game. I think the end game or long game when it comes to dating should really be about you figuring out how you want to be loved, and maybe like the things that you're willing to change or grow. Maybe if there's something you're willing to sacrifice for those situations, right? Because like it's not gonna be perfect, and also in relationships you have to grow. Like you're not a perfect person. I don't think anybody is a perfect person, and I think relationships will show you that and will highlight that. And unless you're willing to grow and kind of like adapt and learn how to be with somebody else, like it's probably not going to work out. So for me, I guess now my end game is figuring out like how I want to be treated you know, how I want someone to show me love and commitment and all those things rather than a specific person. I don't think you should ever necessarily play the long game for a specific person, but maybe for a specific type of love.
I don't know that I valued compatibility as much as I now do.
Mm-hmm.
I think compatibility, like, I just don't think you really know what compatibility means. Or at least I didn't. I'll say that. I don't think I understood like true compatibility and what that meant when I first started dating. Oh, we like the same things. And like that's what I think I view compatibility as. But instead of like, dang, how do you really like to live your life day in and day out? And making sure that that is aligned. And if it's not, that someone is willing to like make sacrifices because either you're going to make sacrifices or they're going to make sacrifices. So you got to figure out that I think it worked really good with someone who's like willing to meet you halfway. So it's not all you making sacrifices for them or them all making sacrifices for you on compatibility. And it's like little stupid shit that you wouldn't even think of. And it's like, oh wow, like that's why it really takes to get to know someone. Like, I mean, motherfucker, my boyfriend, he likes to like sleep with the window open like this. And you guys know how I feel about the window open because of oh, oops, I'll have to beep that because of the sorority. I don't want to get sued. I didn't sign an NDA with them. But because of porch, bro, I cannot, after the trauma of sleeping on a porch.
Porch, it means like a bunch of bunk beds on a room. And then we slept based on our temperature, okay? But like, you think cold dark just means like they like it chilly in there. No, it means the windows are open all year long in negative like 16-degree weather.
And I literally still am, whatever. I'm prone to sinusitis. I don't know how to fucking say it, but I have had prolonged sinus issues from ever since then. It is literally still an issue I have in my life. Okay. So because of that, it's like, that's not going to work. Right. So it's like, okay, 2 bedrooms or window closed. All right. And guess what? You figure it out. But it's just like weird shit like that I didn't know. Like you had to like look for compatibility within somebody.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways of compatibility. The main one is communication. I see a lot of people, including myself, try to make it work with people you can just not communicate with. And God, for the love of God, at some point you gotta quit, bro. Like, we have an episode about giving up, and I truly do believe that if your communication is not communicating, like, after a year, you know it's never gonna work. Like, I'm sorry, but, like, be fucking for real. If you're telling someone what you need and they are not getting it, they're just not getting it, babes, you gotta let them go. That's not endgame.
You gotta let
delusion. I love a good long game endgame in friendships. And I think this comes with the realization as I've gotten older that I'm not going to be best friends with my best friend every stage of our life. You know what I mean? Like, they may be close to other people at some stages. They may be on a slightly different journey than I am that I can't really relate to them in, but I can still be there in certain ways. When you're younger, that's like such a weird concept to latch when you start kind of like losing friendships that used to be really close. You kind of start to freak out, you know, like, what does my best friend have other best friends and now she's changing? That's just like part of life now, I've realized. But I'm still tight with like most of my homies. I've also learned to walk away from some people, not saying that like I dislike them, but knowing that like our communication is not communicating. And right now, most of our interactions are not positive. Let me take a step back.
Yeah, I think with long game with friendships, something that I guess I'm happy I'm in a good place about is that life just be life in and people be going through things and they also just like their lives change, you know? And it's like, okay, I think I'm happy I don't take it personal that my friends, you know, get married, have kids, and I don't hear from them, you know? As often or if ever. And it's like, okay, I'm happy that I don't take that personally. And like in the long game, we still communicate enough where it's like there's still so much love there. And you get, I don't know, it's like nice to be like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I don't know why I wouldn't be invited to your baby shower, but we just haven't talked in a minute. It's like, okay, this person still values me. It's just that they're busy, bro. Like, they just had a fucking baby, you know? You kind of just like let it go.
You do. And you can also like learn to communicate. I think it's just not taking things personally
Yeah.
unless they communicate that you've done something. Like, as I've gotten older, I'm like, all right, you know what? We're all adults. We can all communicate if something bothers us. And at the end of the day, if they feel like our friendship is worth it, and if I feel like our friendship is worth it, if something they did bother me, I'm going to let them know that it bothered me just so I can get it out. Because sometimes,
Yeah.
I would say, 90% of problems, at least with me, are my problems. You know, like if you don't communicate them, they're not our problems, they're your problems. And I sat in a lot of friendships having my problems and not our communal problems because no one knew what the hell was going on because I wouldn't communicate what I needed or if something hurt my feelings. You'd be surprised that most of your friends, like people that truly value you and want you in your life, are going to meet you halfway, are going to want to make sure like you feel loved and valued. And like if someone just isn't giving you that time of day when you're like, hey, what you're doing is hurting my feelings, then that person's just not your friend anymore, and that's okay. That is okay.
Friendship breakups are really hard, and I don't think everything needs to be a breakup. The word friendship breakup sometimes is like a little overused because, not to take it personally, but it's just like, did you guys actually break up? Like, was it really like that serious? Maybe it's because of my experience with people like moving cities, right? Like, dang, they move cities. I'm not great at texting. I'm not great at calling. So I think the expectation of like, oh, we're going to be best friends for fucking life, or it's a huge breakup blowout. I just don't think it needs to be a breakup. Like, obviously, there are friendship breakups. Like, I've had a legit friendship breakup where I was like, this is over, bitch. You've crossed the line one too many times. And guess what? Actually, we're cordial now because it was like, we just needed that little bit of a break, but now we're like super cool. Like, we're not besties, but we're super cool. Send good texts. And I think sometimes people see breakups and I'm like, was it a breakup or did you guys just like slowly fizzle out because you guys just aren't doing the same thing? And maybe you shouldn't think of it as like someone has wronged you, but just that you're not a part of this phase of their life.
Yeah. And there's different types of friendships with people. And you will find like other friends. I think similar principle over here. Long game is, what do I want out of my friendships? And if someone isn't meeting that, that doesn't mean you have to like let them behind or be like, I never want to speak to you again. But it's just not someone you invest as much time with at this time. And they're free to also explore other connections that are fulfilling for that stage of their life as well. But I've had some people that get jelly belly when you get new friends, and I'm like, oh, you can come to the party. Everyone's invited. This is an exclusive.
I mean, yeah. What's some word of advice for the long game is if you really want someone in your life, you can just tell them, right? Like, hey, I've been missing our friendship for real. If they don't respond, then okay, then that hurts. But sometimes you have to put yourself out there in the long game. Like, if you want someone in your life, you better make sure that they know.
Yeah, you do have to be willing to meet them halfway. If you give somebody an ultimatum, be ready for that person to leave for real. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that. I feel like sometimes people use that as like a power tactic to like gain control out of a situation they have no control in. I don't think you should ever give somebody an ultimatum and think they should stay.
I mean, I don't believe in ultimatums, but
Yeah.
again, like, people can't read your mind. So if maybe they feel like you've been ghosting them, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like,
Yeah.
you haven't been hitting them up as often or whatever. Or maybe they're like, I don't know, something for me at least is like, I obviously like, I don't drink anymore, got sober. And initially, some of my friends like just didn't know how to handle it, quite frankly. Like, they just felt like, I don't know, like, I just think a lot of times I had the feedback of like, oh, well, like, I don't want to put you at risk by like drinking around you, but I want to drink. And I was like, okay, first of all, I appreciate that, but like, that needs to be communicated, right? Like, you have to. So I just like, but by saying something to that person, I just was like, hey, honestly, it's not even that big of a deal. Like, that is not, like, the sobriety is not that loosey goosey over here. Like, it's not, it's literally, I know it's that serious for some people, but it's literally not that serious for me. Like, you do not have to worry about it. And it was just this sense of relief. But if I had not communicated, like, you know what, I miss you. Like, why haven't we been hanging out? I wouldn't have ever gotten that. Like,
Yeah.
that friendship would have just fizzled.
Yeah. I mean, it also tells you that like habits are hard to break, and I feel like also a lot of friends we specifically had from college where like our main activity was drinking. But I will say there was nothing to do there. So
I mean, literally, it's
there was
honestly
nothing
sad.
else to do. Yeah. Bad habits when you go to a state school in the middle of nowhere.
Speaking of breaking habits, and like this
Mhm.
is breaking and building habits, I feel like we all go into the new year, like new year, new me, really fucking hot, and then sometimes we slip up, okay? There's some people that don't get through dry January and think that I should completely give up on the goal, you know? I
Yeah.
honestly think you should think about the long game. So if you've already given up on your New Year's resolution because there is something wrong with all or nothing thinking, you know, like doing a 75 hard or something, and like you end up like missing a workout, and then you just feel like I should stop altogether with like making progress. Dude, this is your life is a long game, hopefully. Okay. So just pick back up where you left off. Don't feel any shame or guilt for not being perfect in trying a new way of moving in the world. And just think about the long game, that this is just like the beginning of what could be like a really healthy new like thing, hobby, experience, life.
The long game, you're gonna fuck up sometimes. You gotta learn how to like roll with the punches. I feel like sometimes there's like obstacles in the way. Maybe it's your own habits. If you set like a direction in your life and you start changing little things, eventually you're gonna get to where you wanna be, regardless of what it is. Like, if you really want that, like age will help you heal, age will help you grow. I think like if you're really manifesting that, like a big change in your life, in like, I don't know, for me it was like I really want stability, I really want to better like some of my habits, and I want to be more creative. Those were like my main concepts. Now, have I had like specific goals where I'm like carrying out these like tiny details come into fruition? I wouldn't say not yet. But I think overall, as I've gotten older, like I've become more creative in a lot of different ways. I am like way more confident in the fact that like, oh my god, yeah, I have talent and I can believe in myself and I can feel confident in like getting more responsibility and working with people and representing myself as a creative person. And I feel like I was missing so much of like that character development to kind of like get to where I want to be. And I often see like people that like have their 5 minutes of fame or like kind of like have a like their break and don't know how to keep it. It's just like lack of preparation for that moment. So if you want to think about it like that, it's like a slow burn into success, you know? Like
Mhm.
maybe one day I'll really get to like a career position where I feel like I'm headed, and I'll feel really good when I get there because I have a really strong foundation of life experience, of working with people, collaboration, like all these other tools that I'm learning on my way to get there, while remaining like hungry, while remaining like I have a passion, but maybe it's not something where like I'm like the most disciplined I can be as of right now. It's something I can definitely like work towards getting there.
I think slow burn, the quote that makes me think about is like it takes 5 years to be an overnight success. I Yeah, it just takes a lot of little steps, right? Like the long game is taking the little steps forward, because baby steps don't feel like they're getting you anywhere, but eventually you've baby stepped a mile in some
Yeah.
stilettos, some platform heels. I'm just like on my like tippy toes, like around my I think about a track, you know, how it's like 4 laps around a track. Yeah, and it takes a mile. And I'm just like imagining myself just on like stilettos, like walking, like cunt walking, like across the fucking thing, just because I feel like that's what life is. And sometimes, though, you feel like you're going leaps of bounds ahead, and then sometimes it just feels like you're crawling. But whatever way to get you forward, I think, at least for me, a tool that I've always found helpful is like journaling, because you know, yesterday, or not yesterday, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday, I was just fucking in a funk, dude. I was just not feeling well. I didn't sleep well, you know, all those things. And I was like, all right, well, let me just journal out 5 minutes, like, what the fuck went wrong with today, and like, what I want to get done, you know, tomorrow. And then I did this thing that I always do, which is go back and find like a year, 2 years, from the same day and kind of like look at it. And I'm like, okay, first of all, there's patterns here. We're still working on getting enough sleep. That's the sleep pattern is still fucked. Okay. Really need to drill down on that one. But then there's also things where I'm like, oh, well, look at me. I did that.
Yeah.
Ooh, girly got a new job. She's been complaining for 2-3 years about her job. Look at me now, you know?
I did it.
I did it. So, yeah, reward yourself when you fucking take the small steps, but it might be a long fucking way. But it's okay.
But it's okay.
It's okay.
You'll get there. And sometimes when you get there, it'll make sense why it took so long for you to get there. Like, what other things kind of needed to happen behind the scenes for you to get to where you need to be. Truly, I think so.
Okay, before we close, do you have any, like...
Long
I'll just tell you one of my favorite long cons. It was this woman, okay? She was a copper heiress, right? She had like $300 million that she was going to like pass on. She lived to be 104. And at about 99, people were acting pretty fucking fake, okay? Like everyone around her was acting fake. And they started trying to like con her, right? And she, for whatever reason, she knew what the fuck was going down. So, but she let them like, she like basically pretended they were going to get this money. She was like, oh yeah, totally. You can take care of me. Even though they were being straight up manipulative and only doing it to like get at her money. She dies. She gives it to like the one real ass nurse that was like always nice to her whole life and her fucking dog. And all these money grubbing lawyers and stuff. She was like, ta-ta. But she played them for like 6 years, whether on purpose or not. I don't know if she knew she was going to live to 104. But she was like, oh yeah, okay, you want to play me out of my money and pretend like I'm senile? I'm going to play you.
Sometimes it doesn't hurt to not show that you're the smartest person in the room. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Move in silence.
Move in silence. Do I have a few long cons? Yeah. But maybe the secret to those is to not speak about them. Until they come into fruition, until you're ready to tell the tale of your long con when it's far removed from the people involved.
I don't know if I have any long cons per se. I think my long con is just like being successful despite all the things. Because I mean, I think it'd be really cool if I went from being mentally unwell to like the most successful person on the entire planet. So that's the long con I'm trying to get at. The world had no idea. From frat basements to the tippity top, baby.
Period.
Literally, I'm going to be laughing all the way to the Maldives, bitch. Just give me 5, 10, 15 more years, okay?
Yeah, there's a saying in Spanish, el que ríe el último ríe mejor. This is like getting the last laugh, essentially. So, like, be patient. Like, no, you don't see all the answers right now, but I have a fundamental believer that the universe is always working for me, okay? So, I know I'm gonna get where I need to be. I know it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be like a cuter version of whatever I had already. It's fine.
Hey, and you know what? You never know. I mean, I'm truly, if you're young and listening to this, like, I didn't know that like 30 was going to be a great year. You know what I'm saying? Because everyone tells you, I don't know why the fuck people do this, but like when you're in college and like people come for like dad's weekend and shit, you have like 60-year-old white dudes telling you to like enjoy it because this is like the best years of your life. And like I was scared when people said that to me because I was not feeling like it was the best years of my life while I was in it, you know? Yeah. And now I could most certainly say it wasn't, but I didn't think that like 30 was going to be my best year. But like now I have so much more hope for the future because I was like, oh, I was not predicting that 30 was going to be like fucking great.
Yeah, people have an interesting conception of what like a great time is. You know what I mean? Like, some people like chaos and destruction was a great time. For me, it was chaos and destruction. The older I get, the more things get stable everywhere surrounding me, in my mind, in my body, in my spirit. And the older I get, the better time I really have. So, can't relate.
Who would know stability could be so fun?
It's really nice. All right. Well, from two very stable girls, okay? Thanks for listening to Thanks for Your Concern. Please subscribe. Please tell a friend to listen to the podcast. We've been doing this for a while. And like,
talk about long game. The podcast is a long game, bitch.
There's been no goals to this other than to yap. But it'd be cool to like get some new listeners and build some community. Like that's never a bad time. So I'm at Bernice Ideas M. We're at Thanks for Your Concern, and Ella is at
Ella L. Tudor.
Okie dokie.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.